Good morning, everybody. I hope you're well on this bright and sunny Wednesday here in Cape Town. If it's raining wherever you are, I apologize. Welcome to the first webinar of 2021. Hopefully it's a year filled with a lot more webinars, a lot more interaction. It's one of our aims, I know. Hopefully not too many curveballs, but let's be optimistic. Thanks guys for dialing in. I hope I don't take up too much of your time today. I would like to start with a little bit of housekeeping. The webinar will be recorded and it will be published to the GreatSoft YouTube channel. There will also be a follow-up email sent to all attendees and everyone who missed the webinar with a link to it. That'll be sent tomorrow. Please can I ask that you guys aim your questions to the Q&A section. I have enabled the ability for other attendees to upvote questions, and my 2IC, Kathy, will also be helping me out. She'll be trawling the Q&A board and hopefully answering stuff. I will, be addressing the open Q&A items at the end. So if some of them are left unanswered, they are being left for the end of the webinar. Yeah, I mentioned the upvoting. Please, guys, if you can, we're just trying to avoid duplicates, or else I answer the same question 15 times. And then, yeah, the last thing is that throughout the webinar, I've got 2 polls planned and 1 survey when you exit the webinar. These may seem painful, but to be honest with you, the information that they give us is absolutely invaluable. The survey at the end actually will ask you to rate a feature between 1 and 5. 1 is don't need, and 5 is must have. And I'd really appreciate your guys' feedback on some of the stuff that we're looking to implement into GreatSoft. And that, I said, will pop up at the end. So if we look at today's agenda, just a brief introduction for those of you who don't know who I am, then we'll go into managing SARS correspondence and requesting it in GreatSoft. And then we'll go through preparing for your provisional tax run. I know we are now in the beginning of February, so I'm assuming some guys have already started their Prof tax run. For those of you who haven't, hopefully what I'm sharing with you today will assist you guys in that. Then we've got the physical provisional tax run itself and just some options, some different options that you can use that will affect how your run is done. Maybe you didn't know some of these options existed. And then I'm going to go through the global billing element. So for those of you who either use global billing or didn't know we could do global billing, we have the ability to do global billing for Prof tax. I'm going to go through some of the FAQs, some of the stuff we know about, and then I'm going to keep the questions for the end. I am going to be jumping in between the slideshow and a demo website I've got. So if there is a little bit of jumping around, I do apologize for that. I'll try and keep the transitions as smooth as possible. Cool. So just a brief introduction to myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lee Williams. I am a jack of all trades at GreatSoft, a total and utter caffeine addict. I love tennis, technology. I wouldn't, funnily enough, my mom says that technology just seems to work around me. I don't know whether that's a blessing or a curse, because it does mean I'm IT support. My wife tends to think I work in IT, so I just switch things on and off. I am a cat person. And sometimes I manage the tax product. No, so not just a jack of all trades. I am the product manager for GreatSoft Tax and a number of other things. But yeah, tax is one of my primary responsibilities and has been a passion of mine for a while. Cool, guys. So I want to start off the webinar with our first poll. And I'm gonna launch our first poll, and I'd appreciate you guys if you could vote. The first poll we have is: do you currently make use of the GreatSoft automation or the GreatSoft the recently released SARS Correspondence Dashboard. I'm going to leave the poll up for a couple of seconds. I can see we've got about 10% of people who voted, 15. Awesome. I really appreciate the feedback. Yeah, I'm going to leave it up for about another 20, 25 seconds or so. It does allow people to answer the poll. For those of you that don't know what GreatSoft Automation is, GreatSoft Automation is an application that we install that automatically downloads SARS correspondence for you. Normally, this is programmed to run first thing in the morning, and it will automatically download your correspondence into GreatSoft. You can, if you don't want to license the automation tool, you can download SARS correspondence manually, but the automation tool just allows that information to be downloaded automatically by the time you get to your desk. And if you guys are using Task Center, an email alert is sent to you with the correspondence that's been downloaded. I'm going to end our first poll there. Thank you very much. The stats there is really interesting. I appreciate the feedback, guys. So that leads me to showing you guys how we can manage SARS correspondence in GreatSoft. And there's a couple of ways to do this. The first way is that, well, the main way is that you can download correspondence from SARS. This can be done in a multitude of ways. You can do this by downloading correspondence by date range. You can do it by downloading correspondence by year. And what this will do is this will go and this will poll SARS e-filing, and it will retrieve any documents given the date range or for the tax year for the taxpayers that you've selected. Now, where automation becomes powerful is that it automatically does this for you. It polls all of your clients. So all of your clients' correspondence is downloaded into GreatSoft. At the bottom there, I've added in just an example of what a correspondence email looks like. So our aim is to try and get the information to you as soon as possible, as soon as you get into work. So an example there's the correspondence that's been downloaded for me. We can see that there's some statements of accounts, multiple assessments, Prof tax statement of accounts, etc. So, and that is the way that we've always really done things. So what we've also done is towards the end of 2020, we implemented the SARS Correspondence Dashboard. So the SARS Correspondence Dashboard was, I've heard a client refer to it as a correspondence matrix. What it is, it's an interface that allows you to now interact with the correspondence that we're downloading. What this allows you to do is it allows you to filter. You can mark correspondence as being completed. You can download the SARS documents directly to your machine. You can open up assessments, stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump straight into showing you guys what the correspondence dashboard looks like. So you'll see I accessed the menu bar, I went to tax, and I clicked on SARS correspondence. It is a new feature. If you guys have not seen it yet or you're not using it, it is available in the software. It's available to everybody. You can just get the security token assigned to you. You can contact either our support team or your GreatSoft administrator. So what happens is when you access the correspondence dashboard, the system will automatically go and it will run a correspondence listing, and it will show you all the correspondence that's been brought into GreatSoft for the last day or two. You can see here we've got a couple of things. We've got some action controls on the left. We've got a document number, document type, our client code, client name, tax number. You'll see here we've got a column for completed by and date close. The document name, the date issued, the downloaded date, who the partner manager and in charge is, and the tax year that the correspondence relates to. Some real key features to this is the ability for you to say, you know what, I actually don't want the doc number. So I can click on doc number and it will be removed. I can say I also don't want my client tax number. You can ad hoc change the filters that you see here. We've also got a universal search. So if I just type in here, Reader, you'll see that it's actually picked up the client that has Reader in the client code or in the document name. You can also do some inline filtering. So in the document type, let's say I want only assessments. It will go and it will automatically filter this list only for assessments. Where this tool becomes very powerful is what we allow you to do with this. So you'll see there's a couple of action controls here. So I can now download this assessment, and it will go and it'll grab the physical document from GreatSoft and it will download it to my machine. I'm just waiting for the magic to happen. There we go. It opened on a different screen, but there we can go. There's the actual SARS document. I'm not going to show it to you. It's a live SARS doc. You also have the ability to access the assessment in GreatSoft. So on the assessment record, you can now compare the assessed value to the tax return and see your differences, and you get the normal assessment controls. You can also view the client information from here. So if you click the little view client button, it'll now take you to the client inquiry within GreatSoft. And the last option is where this tool becomes very powerful, and this allows you to mark correspondence as being completed. So I've now reviewed this assessment. I'm happy with it. I can mark this correspondence as being completed. You'll see that when I marked it as completed, it went and added myself in. So just so you guys know, this is data that I've just blanked out. So you'll see everything says first name, surname, and you'll see a date closed here. I can also go and mark that as unopened if I'd like to. And what we can do is in our filters section, we've got a whole host of filters here that will go and filter the physical data that we're looking at. So I can say, you know what, I want to see the correspondence for the last month, let's say, actually, and I only want to see stuff that's open. And I can click on search, and the system will now go and it will research all of my filter settings. So you can see here at the bottom, I've got about 199 rows. Oh, I clicked refresh, whoops. So there we go, it's now gone and it's just refreshed for me automatically. So let me just go and redo my filtering. And I'm going to say I only want to see the open stuff. There we go. So the table shows you by default 10 rows. I can set it to show me 100 and it will show me 100. I can also go full screen. I can page around, and this is all live filtering. So what you can also do here is, let's say, for instance, I want to filter in assessments, and what we can now do is I can say, I can now choose to save this view. And what this will allow me to do is I can save it as last month's open assessments. I can also choose to save this as a standard view if I'd like to, and that means other people can access it. So if I click on save this, it's now saved my view. So the next time I come into the dashboard, you'll see that there's the little view drop down, and I can see last month's open assessments. And when I click on this view, the system will go and it will automatically reapply my view. It's got my filter settings, my inline filtering, it's got my date ranges, everything that I'd previously selected. So you can go and you can customize your views for you. You can also filter by partner, by manager, by in charge, all of that stuff, so that you are only seeing the data that you want to see. And those views are saved, they're never deleted. You can go and change them later on if you want to change your date ranges around, stuff like that. So this is how we've now allowed you to start managing that correspondence. If you are not using our automation tool and you're downloading correspondence, that's generally done by going into the tax menu, going into e-filing, and selecting the relevant profile and going to requesting correspondence either by date range or by tax year. Now, the key thing is when you request correspondence by date range, you are telling the system what date range to go and fetch documents from SARS. So it will ask you for a from date and a to date. And you can also tell it to replace and refresh existing documents. So what we do is we will go and we will poll, if I just put all the clients in here, I would tell it to go and poll for all of my clients. So it will go and it'll poll all the correspondence for all of my clients for the date range given, and it will download, it will compare what we have. Then we have the ability to request this, and there's also a replace and refresh option. So I know I did mention that. And what that'll do is, even if we have the document in GreatSoft, we don't automatically re-download it. What you can do is you can go and replace existing, and we'll go and we'll refresh the documents that fall within that date range. Cool. If there are any questions on this, I think at this point I'm going to save the rest for the Q&A session. Again, if you want access to the Correspondence Dashboard, you can go and get the access. Cool. So I now want to launch our second poll and our last poll for the webinar. So the last poll relates to the provisional tax usage, right? So are you guys using provisional tax in GreatSoft? Are you using it to submit returns? You know, stuff like that. Are you using it to its full potential? And one of the reasons I'm asking you is if you're using it to its full potential is a lot of firms implement systems and do not necessarily utilize them to the best of their knowledge. We're constantly trying to enhance the system, integrating it to our document management system, our portal, stuff like that. And a lot of those things are just trying to get firms time, save them time in the process, bulk letter distribution, stuff like that. So I see so far we've got a high 70s of people saying yes, they are using GreatSoft. That's for Profs. That's really good. It would answer the question as to why you're on a provisional tax webinar. I'm going to leave the poll up for another 10 or 15 seconds. We're at a 70% voted rate, it's really good. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate the feedback. What I do with the polls is I share the polls internally with our account managers, and I also share it with my team. So we've actually got a planning session this afternoon where we plan out the next builds and the new features that we're going to be adding to GreatSoft. And we take the polls and the surveys into consideration when we're doing that, because it's really important to us to have, to be implementing the stuff that our clients want. And being able to ask you guys these questions when we're on the webinar is absolutely invaluable. Cool. I'm going to end that poll there. Thank you very much. We had a high 70s answer rate, which is really cool. Appreciate it, guys. So now what I want to do is I would want to take you guys through preparing for your Prof Tax Run. For those of you who've been using GreatSoft for a while, or those of you who are new to GreatSoft, a lot of firms handle their provisional tax runs differently. Some firms do their provisional tax runs far in advance. Some guys do it at the beginning of February. It depends very much on how your firm does it. Some firms only process provisional taxes in groups or by partner. And we cater for all of those scenarios. But before you do your Prof Tax Run, there's generally a couple of steps that we want you guys to start looking at. So what I want to do is I want to just take you guys through that. So one of the things we always point people towards is to use the Provisional Tax Checklist. So the Provisional Tax Checklist is a document. This document's been around for many years, probably at least 10 years, and we've adapted it over the years. And what it is, it's an end-to-end on the provisional tax process in GreatSoft. So, checking that your data is correct, running checks on stuff like that. There's a whole host of different things. So yeah, the Prof Tax Checklist is very important, and it's available on the Provisional Tax Dashboard. So if you access Prof Tax, you'll see I've highlighted the Provisional Tax Checklist over there, and you can then print it. The next thing is to do, and this is mentioned in the Provisional Tax Checklist, is to check your exceptions. And what we've done over the years is we have had multiple reports that, clients not flagged for tax, clients that are not registered for e-filing. And what we did, actually, I can thank Brad, one of the other product managers and an ex-consultant, who actually went and he took all the reports and he combined them all into one, and we called it the Clients with Exceptions report. And what this report does is it's a one-stop shop really for trying to track all of your exceptions in one report. So instead of having to pull 8 different reports to see your clients with exceptions, it will show you your client and it will show you all of the exceptions that relate to those clients. So whether they don't have an ID or registration number, whether they're not registered for income tax or Prof tax, stuff like that, are they flagged for tax, etc. And it's absolutely invaluable because a client not being flagged for tax or not being flagged for Prof tax is not going to appear in your Prof tax listing. You're not going to be able to run provisional tax for it. So, making sure that your data is correct is absolutely vital in any tax process that you're going to run, especially something as big as Prof tax, because the provisional tax runs are generally bulk runs where you're doing a global calculation, where you're doing bulk submissions to SARS. So it really is I say SARS when you're doing submissions, because we've also got Namibian clients on board who unfortunately cannot submit directly to ITIS, but they do still capture and monitor provisional tax and send out provisional tax letters via GreatSoft. So I guess this webinar is it's a mixture of both South Africa and Namibia. So I do mention a lot of SARS and the integration with e-filing. There is unfortunately no integration to ITIS. I was in Namibia a couple of years ago and I met with ITIS, and they unfortunately were at that point not allowing integrations. We are, waiting to hear back from them when they're ready to open that up, and we can look at whether it's feasible for us to build an integration into ITIS, because like we've done in South Africa, we can see the tremendous value in a firm being able to submit in bulk directly to their revenue authority. Cool, guys. So I'm going to jump back to my demo site. And what I want to do is I just want to show you the stuff that we've discussed now, in action. So, we access the provisionals and we've got the Prof tax checklist. So here we go. So here we can see, and this one still says 90 days before due date. So we've given you timelines. Again, these are very rough estimates. But and we tell you what reports to check, stuff like that, 60 days before, etc. And this report here you can download, you can use it, don't use it. We do try and update it as we add new features or reports or stuff like that. We do update the provisional tax checklist, and then we'll bundle that within an update, so it's automatically updated when we update it on our end. Then of course you've got your clients with exceptions report. So when we trigger this report, some cool things here is that you can actually tell the report what exceptions you'd like to look for. So I can say, what, I want all exceptions, or I only want clients that don't have a year end, or that aren't registered for income tax, or don't have a tax number. So I'm just going to say all exceptions, and I'm going to say run report. And it's going to go and it's going to now process across my entire system. And here's an example. So I've got 8 pages. It is quite a lot. So here we can see all my clients are flagged for tax, but this one is flagged as dormant. There's no ID number or registration number for this client. So what we've done is we've tried to just piece this all together. No last assessment, which is vital for P1s in Prof tax. P2, we're really utilizing you doing actuals. No year ends, not flagged for provisional tax, or tax flags deregistered. All of these things are going to be exceptions that cause clients to not be included in your Prof tax run, to not be included in your global billing, stuff like that. So the exceptions report really is trying to catch all of this for you and give it to you in one easy to print report. Cool. If I jump back to the next thing I want to focus now on is really the provisional tax run and the different options. So over the years, we've had requests from firms to to be able to have different settings. You know, for Namibia, as an example, they don't process off the last assessment. They use the last tax return that's captured in GreatSoft. So we've got a whole host of settings in GreatSoft, whether the system should for Prof tax payments, as an example, should the system automatically assume that your Prof is paid, or do you need to go and capture the payments? When running the global calculation, you know, do you want to be able to select clients or just do it in a bulk way? So I want to cover some of these now and how these can affect your Prof tax run. So the area I'm going to cover right now is the provisional tax options. So if you look down at the bottom on the Prof tax dashboard, there's a tax settings. If you don't have access to this, this is an administrator section because it has, you know, it has quite interesting effects on your Prof tax run. So if you're not seeing it, you know, it requires an administrator to access it. But you know, I'm going to go through these options now, and if there's one that you want to confirm, you would just need to chat to your administrator to make sure that, you know, the settings are, you know, as you would want them. So I'm going to jump back over to our site, and I'm going to open up the tax settings. So let's unpack these, right? And the first one off the top is under general, is calculate Prof tax on a payment basis. So this one is something that comes up in our support team quite a bit. And straight off the bat, let me just tell you how our integration with e-filing is and where we have a shortcoming compared to some of our competitors. And that relates to the ability for you to request the statement of account and for those payments to automatically be captured into GreatSoft. It is something that is on our roadmap, and it's something that is on one of the survey questions for you guys to vote on. But what we can do is, some firms say, you know what, we don't want to capture the provisional tax payments. Our clients are good. They always pay Prof tax. So we are going to assume that we don't need to capture the provisional tax payments, and GreatSoft should not check for them. So if you untick this option, right, the provisional tax system and the ITR system will automatically assume Prof tax is being paid. So what does this mean? It means that if you're processing a P2 provisional tax, the total due for P1 will automatically pull through as Prof tax paid, right? And you don't have to capture a tax entry. Cool, it's great, it's quick. It means, and the same will pull through to our income tax calculators. It will automatically assume that P1 and P2 provisionals, the total due was paid. Now, as we know, in a perfect world, if our clients paid, that's perfect. But for the guys who have some stragglers, they will normally leave this option on. This option on requires you to actually capture tax entries in GreatSoft. So the tax entries in GreatSoft, there's a multitude of ways to do them. You can capture individual entries one by one. We've also created a global tax entries. So I'm just going to pop open a new tab. One of the wonders of a web-based system is you can work across multiple tabs. You can, so if I've got multiple screens running here, I can have multiple instances of GreatSoft running. So something we did release a while ago was the ability for you to do a global tax entries run. And what this will do is this will go and it will automatically create tax entries for you for a particular year, for a particular period. And what this allows you to do is, if you've got 95% of your clients who have paid Prof tax, you can go and automatically create the tax entries for those and delete the ones who've not paid. It's a shortcut to you not having to capture each and every tax entry for your client based on the statement of account that you're having to interrogate. So that's where the calculate Prof tax on a payment basis comes from. The next option is again a legacy option, and this is apply Prof tax 8% increase per note A4. So this is the age-old thing for South Africa, where depending on the age of the last assessment in the system when calculating your Prof tax and the age of the assessment, you can apply 8% increase year on year. Okay, so we do offer the ability for you to not apply the 8% increase for your estimated income. So when you do your global calculation, the system will just take whatever the assessment is and not do a percentage increase. Okay, use standard fee VAT code. So that is when you guys are doing global billing, use the VAT code that is attached to the standard fee. If you don't do that, it will assume the client's VAT code. Check year-end date registered. This will go and it will force the system to only assume year-ends are valid if there's a date registered in CRM. So if your firm has not been using date registered, chances are this tick box is unticked. If it is then ticked, it will, no client's year-end will be seen as valid until there's a date registered captured into GreatSoft. Okay, calculate provisional tax according to the rating income formula. So for farming, the farming provisionals are not as straightforward. We've implemented the ability for you to specify whether you want GreatSoft to apply the rating income formula for farming or not. If you disable this, you will not be able to use the rating, it will not, the system will not apply the rating income, even if you specify an amount in the rating income section on the Prof tax form. Apply COVID-19 relief to all provisional clients. So the COVID relief, we implemented this last year when the COVID relief was announced by SARS. A lot of firms have chosen not to implement this. Just for clarification, and something that came up at the end after August had been completed, was it makes no direct impact to your calculation. The COVID relief is on the payment of the provisional tax. It is not based on the physical calculation. So it's not a scenario of where you would manipulate the figures. I had an example of where someone went into e-filing and physically applied the COVID relief to the calculation. The COVID relief is applied to the statement of account post-submission. And as a reminder, the first one was pretty much a 35% deferral. So for P1, you only needed to pay 15%. P2 would be the full 50%, which would take your total to 65, and then your P3 would require you to do the remaining 35% top up. Okay, now just a note that when this tick box is enabled, the COVID relief will automatically calculate. When you do, although we've activated the COVID relief on GreatSoft, when you do your global calculation, you can still specify whether you want to apply the COVID relief at the point of calculation or not. So if you don't want to apply the COVID relief to all of your clients, you can untick this when you do your global calculation. You'll see the system tells you that no relief will be applied, but you can go and you can manually activate it on a client-by-client basis. Okay, as I mentioned, it's not physically submitted to SARS. It's purely for your calculation purposes, for you to show your client what you estimate the payment will be once the statement of account is issued. Okay, if we move on to the next setting, is validate date tax return sent to SARS. So again, this was an option we brought in for South Africa, and for firms that don't use GreatSoft to submit provisional tax in South Africa. So you'll note on the Prof tax form, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up surname Solar over here, and you'll see that there is a due date and a date sent to SARS. So when submitting through GreatSoft to SARS e-filing, the date sent to SARS is automatically populated, and that we know is the physical submission date. For firms that are not using GreatSoft to submit to SARS, they have the ability to disable this tax setting. And when you disable this tax setting, the system will automatically use the due date. Okay. Sorry, the date, yeah, it will use the due date, and it will assume that on the due date, that date, or whatever date is set in the, sorry, not the due date, the date calculated. I need more coffee apparently. On the date calculated, the date calculated will be assumed as the submission date, and this impacts the reports as well. So when you're pulling a report in GreatSoft, it will go and check this little tax setting to say, how many should I check the date sent to SARS, or should I just check the date calculated, which previously in our old release 7 system was called the date submitted. We never had the date sent to SARS. So for the guys in SA, or even for the guys in Namibia who want to physically track the date it was submitted, this tick box should be activated and the date sent to SARS field always used. Okay, the next one is number of historic years for processing. So this affects the drop downs in GreatSoft. So you can see mine set to 20. I mean, our interactions on our tax calculators and our prop forms, I think, go back to probably 2008, I think. So, we offer you the ability to go to 20. You can, if you want to, store tax records from before then, but we don't physically calculate it. Our income tax calculators also only calculate for certain years. So individuals and companies might go back to 2013, where you can only do trusts, as an example, from 2017. That's for income tax. For provisional tax, you can go further back, a lot further back. Now, this is where we start getting into some of the intricate stuff, and these will definitely affect how the provisional tax is calculated. So the first one is use the PAYE from P1, from the assessment, or nothing for the P2 calculation. So when we do the global calculation, because we don't have a physical PAYE figure, for your estimate, we want to know what value should we use. So must we use the latest assessment value? Should we use the P1 amount and double it? Or should we not enter the PAYE at all? Okay, so depending on what your setting is here, the provisional tax calculation will behave in a particular way. The same thing goes for the next 3 options, which is use the foreign tax credits from P1, the last assessment, or none. The assessed medical scheme credits. So the assessed medical scheme credits, these options here, so the foreign tax credits, you can do P1 or the assessment or none. The medical scheme credits are either from the last assessment or nothing. And the same thing for the additional medical scheme credits. Okay. We don't allow you to use the P1 values. It's either based off that. Okay, the next option we have is the global calculation checklist. So for those of you who are familiar with our global process, right, when you go to the global calc, you come to here, it's a very blanket type of thing. You can filter down to office, group, taxpayer type, stuff like that, and exclude dormant, stuff like that. And you would then generally say, I want to do 2021 second period, February, and I want to generate my global calculation. Some firms have asked for a more granular approach. They may only want to do certain taxpayers within a group or something. So if we activate the use global checklist, and I'm just going to save and close this now. When we click on the global calc, right, you'll see the form immediately changes and there's a new section that opens up here. What this allows us to do is when we've done our filtering, right, we can click on refresh list and it will now go and it will populate all of our clients for the selected date ranges. Come on. Why don't you like me? It's not a demo if something doesn't break. No, does not like me today. Oh. Cool. What should happen here, guys, and I'll go and see why my demo data has fallen over, is that it actually will go and list your clients and you can go and flag them individually, right? And then say, I only want to calculate my provisional tax for those guys. Okay. Again, apologies. It was working. It's never a demonstration if something doesn't break. The age old words. Okay, so I'm gonna unflag that. Then we've got some non-South African settings. So for our Namibian clients, so in South Africa, we are required to have cents, and SARS will fail a submission if we don't include our cents. We can round up if there's half cents, etc. But for Namibia, they don't want cents, so we've got the ability to round provisional tax amounts, which will round to the nearest rand. tax extensions, which are still valid in Namibia. You can specify how long the tax extension notice period is. You can specify that in days. Use the provisional tax global calc as the submission date. So the system will go and it will automatically just fill in the date for you. So because there's no way for you to submit directly to ITIS, you can just, GreatSoft can just assume that all of your stuff at the due date is submitted. Check the weekends for year-end dates. So this is actually a global setting. And what this will do is this will go and it will check the due date. And if the due date falls on a weekend. So South Africa and Namibia handle this differently. South Africa, if the due date is on a Saturday, the due date moves to the Friday before. If it's Namibia, it's moved to the Monday after. So you can tell the system, and I always encourage guys to leave this activated, is that you always check weekends for the end date, right? And that will then shift the dates accordingly. Okay. Namibian IRP6 approval reference, and then the last one for Namibia, use the tax return for Prof tax. So instead of using the last assessment in the system, our Namibian clients have the ability to tell their client, to tell the system to only use the tax return as to gather their estimated income. Okay, then you can see here where your global letters will generate to, and then the client address to use for tax letters. So you can specify if you want to use the delivery address, the postal address, or the tax address of your clients when generating the letters. And the system will go and it will pick the relevant letter for you. Okay, a lot of different settings and different permeations on how you can process the Prof Tax Run. So I'm just going to save and close that. And what you can notice there is it's actually telling me that it's locked. So I'm just going to save this record. You'll see that the last assessed was 2020, and it was a negative, so our increase amount was nothing. I'm going to jump back now to the presentation. So we've now covered the provisional tax options, the global calculation. So, I mean, this is the calculation process on a high level, and this is, specified in the checklist. So it's to confirm that your settings are correct. Run the global calculation for the period. So that is for 2021, February P2 as an example. Print a provisional tax summary to see, if anything jumps off the page or if there's any anomalies. Hopefully by you doing your checks before you run the process, you will capture and catch any of those exceptions. Then for our South African clients, it is to request the IRP6 return from SARS. So what I want to do is I just want to unpack this a little bit and explain to you guys how our integration with e-filing works. Our integration with e-filing is direct for some things, and it goes via a third party. That's why we get the term ISV, independent software vendor. So SARS, instead of allowing us all to just ping e-filing directly and add additional load, we have the ability to go via this interface. And this interface does a couple of things, right? It manages load for SARS, but it also causes a delay in certain aspects. So for those of you who submit Prof tax or request items, you'll note that the first time that you request a return in GreatSoft, if the return is not open on SARS e-filing, your error message will say failed. Your return will be available within 24 hours. Okay, what that does is the first time you request a return and it's not open on e-filing, it will go and it'll tell SARS, hey SARS, I want to open this question. I want to open this provisional tax return. Generally, I tell clients to wait 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the volume that they've requested, and then re-request the returns. What it does is it gives time for e-filing to go and open all of those IRP6 returns individually. Okay, and then the next time that you request, the system will go and it will retrieve the physical IRP6 now that it's open on e-filing. Sometimes there can be a delay. So SARS, that 24-hour message is actually it's a standard message from SARS that says, you know what, wait, please, hold your horses. And sometimes due to load or, I don't want to say instability, but yeah, due to high volumes and stuff, it can sometimes be an overnight process. But you must always request the returns twice. because the first time, if they're not open on e-filing, the system does not automatically request those returns. It goes and it just tells SARS to open them, and you need to go and re-request them. And once you've requested your returns, right, how do you know that your return has been successfully requested from SARS? Your e-filing status here will show you successfully requested, and your e-filing values will have amounts here. So we do pull through the last assessed year and the amount from e-filing. That allows you to compare it to what's in GreatSoft. Okay, cool. If you're on the Prof form, you can also choose to retrieve the return here, or you do it in bulk via the e-filing menu. Awesome. That really covers the Prof Tax Run. I know that that's a very high level, and from here on out, once the global calculation's done, what happens at firms differs, right? So what a lot of firms do is they'll do the global calculation, and then they'll go and print the provisional tax summary, right? So some firms choose to just print the provisional tax summary. Some firms choose to print the expanded provisional tax summary. The reports are similar, but contain different information. You guys can go and select the report that works for you and go at will. So yeah, I don't really want to preach too much on what the processes are. If you've got particular questions on it, you're welcome to post in the Q&A, and I'll try and address those at the end. But most firms have a very particular way of how they do their provisional tax processing. So I don't necessarily want to give you guys a best practice, because best practice does not necessarily mean it works for your practice. Okay, so yeah, the next thing on our to-do list is global billing for provisional tax. So normally once the dust settles and we're at the end of Feb. Sorry, I just want to answer this question live. So there was a question that says, do we have to request the return a third time if you've made an adjustment? No. So the requesting of the return, all it does is we download the last assessed income and the last assessed amount. And what that also does is that gives us a little token. And that token allows us to submit the return to SARS. So in the process for Prof Tax, you can't submit a return, or you can't even mark it as ready until you've requested it from SARS, until we've got those tokens. And one of the reasons that you've got to request it, you've got to do the global calculation, then you request it, is you can run a report in GreatSoft that will show you where there's a difference between the estimate on SARS e-filing and there's a versus the last assessed in GreatSoft. And that's a nice stopgap to see, why is SARS using an old assessment, or we're missing an assessment in GreatSoft. Hopefully you're not missing, but it does happen sometimes. For those guys that don't have automation, sometimes you don't run it for the correct date periods or something, or someone misses it and there's assessments that are missed. There's also some other key reports that can be used, like assessments issued after the provisional tax calculation. So that's a global report to let you do that. So I'm just going to mark the first question as being done. Yeah, so Gladys, that's sorry, there's another question that's popped in here, guys. Gladys, that is a very, very specific thing to you. So we need to have a look at your particular scenario there, because generally the last assessment will pull through from the assessments in GreatSoft, unless your letters have been configured differently. So maybe if you can just ping our support guys after this with that issue, they'll be able to to address that for you. Cool. Another one that's coming, Jill, I'm going to answer that at the end, just so that we can move on. So the guys that want to drop, the guys that want to drop off can drop off. So I want to move on to global billing for Prof Tax, and that will be for the guys that choose to bill via GreatSoft. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump back to GreatSoft, and for those of you who do billing in GreatSoft and are not sure of or have never used global billing before, you have the ability to do global billing in GreatSoft. And what this allows you to do is this allows you to bill your clients for the tax returns. Now, this is a very blanket way of doing it. So generally, when you're setting up your master forms in GreatSoft, you attach a fee to it. Some firms don't do that, and I'm going to show you what we've done. But what you can do is in the global billing section, you can say, I want to bill for a particular office, or you can bill for all offices. You can bill for a particular partner. So you can say, I want to bill for Prof Tax. I want to bill for, let's do 2021, year end, February, and provisional tax period the 2nd. And I can choose whether I want to bill based on the date submitted or the last updated. So what this does is this allows us to say, I want to include rows. So I only want to bill for the February 2021 period where the returns were submitted within this date range. Okay. You can also then specify the invoice these bills should go to, etc. So I've said here, I want to bill for Prof Tax. We can see here my batch number is an auto number. It's got a batch date, the allocation code. Something new that we've brought in for the guys that do global billing is we find that a lot of guys get to the end of the provisional tax process and they realize that they've not set up their fees for the year, or they've not updated their fees for the year. What we brought in recently is the ability for you to update fee details, right? It's currently only available for provisional tax, but what this allows you to do is you get to the end of it and you go, shoot, I've not updated my fees. You go and you update your fees, but it does not retrospectively update your provisional tax returns. You can come here now and you can say, I want to update fee details. And I can say, I only want to update it if it's missing, or I only want to update it for my payable returns. And for my individuals, corporates, and trusts, I can now go and I can specify the fee I want to update to their records before we do the global billing. Okay, so this was something our support guys were struggling with a lot, where guys are not updating their fees when it comes to a new year, or they've, when price increases happen. So we brought in this update fee details to allow you to update your fees across your Prof tax returns before you actually do your billing, so that you're not having to call the support guys and asking them to retroactively do it for you. Okay, once we're happy with all of this, 2021 Feb, 2nd period, awesome. I can go and I can say continue, and the system will go, it's just going to tell you here to improve performance, because depending on the size of your batches, if you've got thousands and thousands of clients, it can take a long time to do this, but you can go and do you want to do your provisional tax calculation? And I can say yes. Okay, so I don't have any rows because I haven't done the global calculation in my database. But at this point now, it would go and it would run the billing for you, and it will go and it will create a batch for you to go and handle your billing. At that point, you can go and edit it. It will not be a posted batch automatically. It will go and it will put it in the billing area for you to go and do that. Something I didn't mention, guys, sorry, is that when you're billing, I've selected to bill invoices, but you do also have the ability to bill fees. So for those of you who do time-based billing and do capture timesheets against your clients for provisional tax, when you do the global billing, you also have the ability to do fees, and you can specify when you're doing Prof tax which task you would like to select. So I don't have any active tax tasks, but I can go and select a tax task, and it will then, when I do my bill, it will not raise an invoice, it will raise a fee. Okay. Oh, yes. The preview button. So before I do my billing, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say first period, date submitted, and I'm just going to run this for 2020 as an example from there, just to see if I can get some records here. So if I click on the preview button, right, invoices. Okay. Cool. Now I can choose at this point, thanks for Sunday, is I can, before I run the billing, is I can run the preview. Right, so I can run an exception report to see which clients are going to run an exception, or I can say, you know what, here is the global billing report. So this is a preview report, and this will show you which returns it's picked up that are going to be billed in the current process. So here we can see I've got a total of 8 clients. They were submitted on this particular date, and that's the fee amount that we're going to be billing them with a total of that. So this allows you to go and preview your billing before you actually generate it. Okay, the same thing goes where when you click on preview, you can click on exceptions, and any clients who may not be billed, or something. Here we go. So, and we can see the clients are not flagged for office costing. Okay, so at that point there, these clients are not going to be billed because they are not a part of. The reports are available in, these are reports have been around for ages. If you, when you're clicking on preview, are not seeing both reports, it means that the reports are not assigned to your security profile. So yeah, if you don't have, you would need to speak to your GreatSoft administrator to allow you access to the global billing exception report or the global billing listing report. Okay. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to run this billing now. So yes, I'm happy. So there it's going to go and create the 8 bills. So there it's created a batch. And I can now go over to the billing area. Just wait for my my system to come alive. And once we access the billing area, there we can go. Here is the provisional tax batch of global billing that I just went and created. So here's each individual invoice, and I can go into this particular invoice, and now I can go and make ad hoc changes if I'd like to for that particular bill. So here you can see here, even in the narration, we've said first provisional tax, okay, as an example. So there, that is creating global billing. So for you to be able to, you know, take those bulk processes and turn them into revenue. Cool. I'm gonna jump back, and we now hit the FAQ section. So I've got a couple of things here that come up for Prof Tax FAQs. If I don't cover a question, you know, you're welcome to ask them. I see we've got a couple of questions coming up for the Q&A section, so I will address those then. So if we look at the Prof Tax FAQ, can I run the global Prof Tax calculation more than once? Yes, you can. You can run it as many times as your heart desires. And the reason for this is we've built the provisional tax that you can do the provisional tax calculation as many times as you want. And the safety nets we built into place here, guys, is that you have the ability to actually go and rerun it. So let's say you've missed assessments or something like that. But when you run the global calculation, the system will go and it will check whether your records are flagged as global or manual, right? If the record is still a global record, the system will recalculate it if it falls within the correct parameters. If it's a manual record, so a manual record means a user has gone in and edited a figure or printed a letter or something like that, right? The system will not recalculate it. So once a record has become a manual record, it is excluded from any further global calculations. Okay. Let's say, for instance, someone's gone in and made a mistake on a return. They can also flag it as a global record again by just clicking on the little change button on the Prof form. Okay, and this will then revert it from a manual to a global or a global to a manual. When you convert a manual back to a global, the system will go and redo the Prof tax calculation. Okay, it will go and it will take the last assessment of the last tax return and it will rerun the calculation for you. It will wipe out any user captured figures. Okay, when we requested returns from SARS, so the values are blank. Yes, they can. So if you've requested it early and you find that the values are blank, you can re-request the RP6s and the e-filing values will be downloaded into GreatSoft. We have had a scenario previously where the figures were physically missing from clients' returns. It goes and they weren't actually available to do it. So we had to actually go and ping SARS and ask them to just make those available, which we did. And the clients were then able to get them. But generally, you should be able to just re-request in GreatSoft, and there shouldn't be an issue. Okay, so my provisional tax return shows is locked. How do I unlock it? So as we've done with our ITRs for provisional tax, because we track the history and the status and stuff like that, we lock a return when a user opens it. And if a user doesn't correctly close the form, like they force the window closed, as you can do on browsers, it will actually keep the returners locked. So what we've done is we've implemented a release lock feature, and the release lock feature can either be implemented or can be hit from the dashboard. So you can click the little action button and say release lock. Or as of the update being released this Friday, we've implemented a release lock button on the form itself. I know it's taken us a long time to get there, and it was a complete oversight on our side, but we have now added in a release lock button to the provisional tax form that will allow you to just do it completely within the form instead of having to close it and use the dashboard. Okay, clients with no last assessments are excluded from the global calculation. This one comes up quite a bit. There is actually a hidden system option for it. And this was originally by design. We are actually looking to just activate that system option globally. So if a client doesn't have a last assessment, the system will still calculate for them. It will just calculate zeros. One of the limitations with SARS is that we can't submit a Prov return without a last assessment in it. So some clients have to go and just create a zero assessment. It is something the guys are aware of, but there's just been no change there. The last one here was, do I really need to capture every Prof tax payment in GreatSoft? And this is actually a question that came up this week. So I did cover this earlier when we went through the settings of the global entries. You either do or you don't, and that is dependent on the Prof tax setting that you use on that calculate provisional tax payment basis. Okay. So depending on how you use that setting, you may have to capture them, or you can use the global tax entries that will go and generate all those things for you. Okay. Guys, I'm going to move over to our Q&A section now. For those of you who've stuck around so long, thank you very much. We've hit the hour mark. So actually pretty well timed. So I'm going to move over to the questions that are open right now. And yeah, thanks for the guys that are going to jump off now. You're welcome to. Cool. So I'm just going to answer our questions here. So one from Kim. When we do bulk publishing of letters to CDM, is there a way to hold back specific clients? Kim, unfortunately not. The global letter function in GreatSoft is designed to do it for all clients. Okay. If you're waiting for figures, you need to physically delete the return. So that it's not, there's no provisional tax record for it. It is something that the dev team are busy looking at now. We are looking to expand the global letter functionality for both secretarial and tax to be a bit more controlled, so that you can approve and suspend documents before just bulk publishing them to clients. Okay. There's a question here. Will it reflect as paid and subsequently include the paid amount on the P2 calc? I think there might have been a question asked before that I haven't seen. It's a pleasure, Kim. And can I mark the Prov returns as submitted in bulk, or do I have to do each taxpayer individually? So Federico, depending on how you submit the returns, if you do them by to e-filing, the returns are automatically submitted or automatically marked as submitted when they are sent to SARS. If you are not using e-filing, you would need to go and flag each return as being submitted external. To do that, you can just hit the Prof tax. It is unfortunately a per return process, but what you can do is you can, when you've got the return open, is click on File and click on Mark External, and that'll ask you what date it was submitted. Alternatively, I'll just close that. There is a little action button here, and you can do this on the dashboard that says flag is submitted external. Okay, and you can then mark the particular return as being submitted external. Cool. So do we need to complete the turnover on the IRP6? So yes, Corin, one of the requirements for the COVID relief calculation is that the turnover must be specified. The turnover, because there's a turnover limit for the COVID relief, the turnover must be inserted into GreatSoft when you submit to SARS. Although we show the calculation, all we've done is we've generated the calculation in GreatSoft. That does in no way affect the calculation at SARS, right? So you need to do the turnover. Okay, thanks, Kathy. Sorry, guys, I just had another message, another pop up, and this was, yeah. So, Corin, you need to fill in the turnover. We don't force you to fill the turnover in to do the COVID calculation, but it is a requirement for SARS. It is one of the things that they check when applying for when checking if a client is eligible for the COVID-19 relief or not. What is the create tax tracking records for the current year in the global calculation? So what this does is this goes, and because you're doing a provisional tax record, it will go and it'll automatically just open up a tax tracking record, so an income tax tracking record for the same year. Okay, is there a way of syncing 2021-01 from e-filing to GS if we have a new partner? No, unfortunately not. SARS does not allow us to download provisional tax information from e-filing. It's something you'd have to go and do a mock run to try and get base figures off it based on the last assessments. But unfortunately, yeah, there is no way for us to download that information from e-filing. Should I mark that as answered? Is there a possibility or plan of integrating with the ITIS system? Yeah, so this was, I was in Namibia a couple of years ago, and we met with the ITIS guys and the Minister of Revenue to discuss integrating with ITIS. And at that point in time, the ITIS system was not yet ready for integration. We have asked them that when they are ready for integration to reach out to us so we can look at what an integration would look like. So no, at this point, we are waiting for ITIS. Okay, can you submit a revised IRP6? And if not, how do you do it on GreatSoft? So SARS do not allow us to resubmit. Like you can do a request for corrections, they do not allow you to do a request for correction for IRP6s. If there needs to be a request for correction, it has to be done on e-filing. And what you can do in GreatSoft is you can edit the return, and you can then go and update the figures, but you cannot resubmit through SARS. It's an age-old thing from the first time that they ever implemented their interface with e-filing or with vendors. So yeah, cool. And then I've got a couple of other questions here. Is there an extra fee for the SARS correspondence dashboard? I'm assuming for the correspondence dashboard. No, there's no extra fee for the correspondence dashboard. That is something that we've released as an added feature at no extra cost. The automation tool, however, does carry a monthly license fee, and that's just to automate the downloading of the correspondence for you. We've got another question here. No, you cannot manually add SARS correspondence to the correspondence dashboard. We only actively check the items that have been downloaded via e-filing. The next question, sorry guys, these are actually on a separate thing. It seems they were marked as answered, but wanted to be answered. So the correspondence dashboard is free, as I mentioned, and automation has a monthly charge. Please, if you are interested in the automation tool, please contact your account manager. They'll be able to quote you and get that implemented for you so that you can start benefiting from a little bit of automation. Cool, and our last one is the latest assessment and Prof tax last assessed. So what we've had in a scenario is when you're working on a provisional tax return, at the time of doing the provisional tax calculation, let's say, for instance, the client I'm looking at here only had a 2019 assessment in GreatSoft. and subsequently to running the calculation, a 2020 assessment has been issued. We don't automatically update the assessment in GreatSoft on the provisional tax return. What we do is, if the assessment is a qualifying assessment, so that means it hasn't been issued within 14 days of due date, what we do is we add the Prof tax last assessed here will be highlighted in yellow with a little button here. And what this will indicate is we'll show you the last assessment here would show the 2020, but your Prof tax assessment would still show 2019. Okay. What we then can do is you can click the little refresh button situated over here, and the system will go and it will apply the 2020 assessment to the Prof tax return. Okay. And generally, we will stop you from submitting because the assessment is valid and it could cause issues if you have used the incorrect assessment when submitting to SARS, although generally your figures are your own derived figures. Just checking if we've got any others. I don't think so. So guys, thank you very much for attending. As I mentioned, thanks for taking part in the poll. Thank you for listening to me ramble for over an hour now. If you guys have got questions, please, any technical issues, please, get hold of our support team. Masunda, I see, do you have a checklist? Yeah, you can use the provisional tax checklist. I did mention it earlier in the webinar, that you can use the provisional tax checklist, which gives you an outline of the provisional tax process. If you've got suggestions or stuff like that, you're welcome to send them along to us. At the end of the webinar now, you will be given a survey. Andrea, I'm not going to demonstrate the replace and refresh. The demo data I've got is that what the replace and refresh will do, though, is it will download the correspondence into GreatSoft, and it will then just replace the documents that already exist. It's more of a back-end process. It's not something that we do. Bianca, CPD, if you'd like CPD, we can issue you a non-structured. So you're welcome to just pop me a mail and we can sort that out for you. Cool. Guys, thank you very much for joining. Anything else, please let us know. And I look forward to your responses to the survey, and have a good rest of your week. Thank you very much.